Let's bring in Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara. He's in London with us live, kicking off this week-long coverage of the one-year mark of the Gaza war. Marwan, in the immediate aftermath of the October 7th attacks, your fears for what might happen were among the most pessimistic that I heard at the time. And of course, when we look at it now, more than 40,000 people killed, Gaza broken, maybe beyond repair, the region descending into war. You weren't pessimistic, you were just right.
Well, it wasn't based on any instinct of sort, not even anchored in history. It was just seeing the case for genocide being manufactured each and every day between October 7 and October 19. You see, Cyril, if you remember, in October 12, within 12 hours, Hamas had shaken Israel. Israel was shook to the core. It was humiliated. It felt a major loss, not only because hundreds of its civilians were killed, but also because hundreds of its soldiers were killed and its military bases were violated. Its settlements, its villages were also run over by a movement that Israel long considered to be inferior to its mighty military. So after those 12 hours humiliated Israel, then we witnessed 12 days that basically went to shape the following 12 months. And during these 12 days, as I wrote, I think back in October 10, Israel and the United States began to manufacture the case for genocide. First, by demonizing Hamas as the ultimate terrorist organization of the 21st century. It's even worse than ISIS. It's even worse than Al-Qaeda. That to tackle it, it must be defeated just like ISIS was. And if anyone remembers what happened after 2014, especially 2017-18, they know the way it was handled, the countless deaths and so on and so forth. Of course, Hamas is nothing like ISIS. It's a national movement, and although it did carry terrorist attacks, it remains to be a national movement that seeks, as you spoke to your earlier guest, resistance and liberation of their homeland. But the demonization of not only Hamas, the demonization of Gaza as human animals, if you remember, also took charge, and Israelis began to demonize the entire Palestinian population there in preparation for basically bombing them, killing their children, bombing their hospitals, their schools, their residential buildings, and so on and so forth. And then what we saw by October 19, 12 days later, it was Biden, the American president, who capped it all at the White House when he tied in the question of Palestine to the question of Ukraine, saying Israel, like Ukraine, Palestine, like Russia, America needs to take charge along with Israel, contextualizing the question of Gaza with Ukraine and Taiwan, believe it or not, saying that Israel has every right, like Ukraine has every right. And hence, suddenly we had the case for genocide being defined by dehumanization, by political considerations of revenge and so on and so forth, as well as geopolitical calculus. That opened the way for an unraveling genocide that basically killed, as you stated, tens of thousands of people. And probably by the end of it, we're going to say that some 10% of the population in Gaza was either killed or injured.
So Marwan, you feared and you sensed that this was coming, and it did. Is there anything over the last 12 months that surprised you?
Well, I'm a student of international relations. I taught international relations for my students for many years, and I spoke on Al Jazeera for the past two dozen years. But it never really got to me. I taught it for years. I wrote about it for years. How, in the end of the day, international relations is about power. That imperial powers have one standard, not two standards, not double standards, power. And so I was taken aback throughout by something I taught a long time ago, but it never really sunk in. The silence, the deafening silence of Western powers, the deafening silence of Western governments. the Western silence, the silence of Arab governments. And to top it all, the silence of Western media. They are the ones with the eyes and ears. They're the ones who are supposed to be reporting. They're the ones who had the freedom to be able to report about such very important tragedies that were unraveling on our screens and other screens. But there was silence for many months while children were slaughtered, while hospitals were bombed. And that just goes a long way to tell you that while we as human society, we do think in terms of values, and we do things in terms of, we must reach out and we must have empathy, sympathy, and so on and so forth. But when it came to Gaza, whether it was a question of racism, or a question of imperialism, or a question of anti-Semitism, or whatever it is, right, there was deafening silence. So much so when I was covering on TV, like I am doing now, I was sometimes feeling myself screaming. Even I was reminded by our program, our editors, our colleagues, that, Marwan, why are you screaming? It's as if I wanted just to get a message through, because there was this major frustration that the world is watching, but it's not listening. The pain of the Palestinians as they die in their hundreds and thousands every week. And it's just gone on for a year. Only much later on did some of them start catching up. But the majority of Western powers and Arab governments, they remain silent until today.
Al Jazeera's senior political editor. We'll talk again. Thank you very much.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.